Now let's get more on the intensified Israeli raids that are also going on in the occupied West Bank. We can join Imran Khan. He's live for us from Ramallah there. And Imran, big raid going on in Jenin and elsewhere in the occupied West Bank. Tell us more.
Well, the raid that started in Jenin is by far the largest that we've seen since October the 7th. It began around midnight and ended at 7 a.m. in the morning. Hundreds of Israeli soldiers, we're being told, fought their way into the camp. They met with stiff resistance from Palestinian gunmen. Once they managed to get into the camp, interestingly enough, they actually arrested a senior Fatah leader. That's the other big political party here in Palestine. Interestingly enough, the last raids that we've seen have all been against Hamas leaders, not Fatah leaders. It's the first time we're hearing about that. The family actually says that the Fatah leader was actually badly beaten. After he was arrested, there was a lot more fighting going on, and that's when they used a drone strike to try and keep control of the area. And then after that, they brought in armoured bulldozers, 3 of them this time. That's a big number. We haven't seen really anything more than 1 in these previous raids, where they dug up roads and destroyed symbols of resistance. After that, there was another raid, began around 2 a.m. in Tulkarm, and that is where a 65-year-old Palestinian man was shot. That's like 4 people who have been killed in these 2 raids in total. However, 56 people have been arrested in those 2 raids and another one in the occupied West Bank. That brings the total of Palestinians in Israeli jails to 6,600. 1,800 of those are under administrative detention, basically held without charge. And since October the 7th, almost 1,800 people have been arrested.
And Imran, all of this causing so much anger throughout the occupied West Bank. What's going to be happening today in Ramallah?
Well, not just in Ramallah, but across the occupied West Bank, they've organised a general strike. That's every government building, that's schools rather, that's all of the shops, the businesses, everything is shut down. And the strike, Laura, is actually holding. Take a look around you. Ramallah is simply a ghost town right now. There have been protests that have been moving around Ramallah. Expect to see those protests get slightly bigger during the day. In a couple of hours, there'll be another, it's about an hour, in fact, actually, there'll be another demonstration outside the United Nations building. Palestinians in Ramallah, in the occupied West Bank, are showing their solidarity with the Palestinians in Gaza. But much more than that, this is all in the aftermath of that massacre in Jazeera refugee camp.
OK. Imran Khan joining us there from Ramallah. Thanks very much, Imran. Well, as Imran was saying, in Jenin, in this raid, there's been an airstrike that hit the refugee camp. Charles Stratford joins us now live from Jenin. Charles, tell us, first of all, what you're seeing there.
Well, you join us on a street here just on the outskirts of the camp, the refugee camp that is inside Jenin. We've been inside the camp, we've looked at the level of destruction there. There's been talk about an airstrike or airstrikes. Certainly what we've seen that the locals describe to us as being airstrikes, I wouldn't say that they qualify as that. Now, whether indeed there were projectiles that were fired from some form of drone, that remains to be seen. But you can see the level of destruction on this street, the cars destroyed. The locals here are telling us that it would have been about 2 a.m. that the Israeli military came into Jenin. This road here that you can see was literally just dug up by one of these military-grade bulldozers that we see to the being used to such devastating effect in these raids that are now happening every night. There were tens, we are told, of Israeli soldiers that came into Jenin last night. There were a number of arrests. There was at least 3 people killed here in Jenin, another 11 injured, 1 in a critical condition. But when you talk to people here, their reaction as to why, for example, this was done here on a street where they say there were no clashes, there were no kids throwing stones, it was a quiet night last night, and this bulldozer just came in and dug this road up. And of course they call it a form of collective punishment. Now, there's a theory sort of bandying around that this effort being made by the Israelis to destroy civilian infrastructure like this is a means or an effort by them to try and turn the local population against the armed resistance groups that exist here in Jenin. For all intents and purposes, that seems to be failing. There is no indication here whatsoever, talking to the civilians, that they would do that. And bear in mind that Jenin has, for many, many years, been a centre for the armed resistance here in the occupied West Bank. There are various different factions, various different groups, a lot of weapons. There have been a lot of arrests, and there have been a number of people killed here since the beginning of the war. And the situation has got a lot worse, obviously, since the beginning of the war on Gaza. But there's no indication here of people being moved enough by this kind of destruction to turn against the armed resistance groups. Now, this street, we're told, still no electricity. Electricity was turned off, apparently, just before the raid happened. Not right the way across the city, but within given areas. We're going to be going to the hospital. We're going to be speaking, hopefully, to the hospital staff there about the level of injuries. But, yeah, there is a great sense of fear and tension here in Jenin because these raids are happening every single night. The clear-up operation continues here, and yeah, we'll be bringing you more reaction throughout the day.
Absolutely. OK, we will hear from you more, Charles, as you visit more people there in Jenin and in the hospitals. For the moment, thanks very much for bringing us the scene there in Jenin refugee camp in the occupied West Bank following the latest raid.